The hearts are pumping. They're ready. Set. Lights on. Stand by. He holds them there. All clear. Racing in the Quokka.
When the sky is clear and the moon is shining down, my heart goes running back to you.
Straightening up now in the Quokka overpass as Fura going toe-to-toe. They're giving each other the big eyeball. Red Can Man joined them both though. A length and a half Uncommon James letting down. Where's Amelia's Jewel? Back in the field but running on strongly. As Fura overpass. Red Can Man. 100 left to go. Overpass as Fura. Amelia's Jewel coming. She's coming at the rate of numbers. Overpass. Amelia's Jewel. She lunged. Did she get there? I don't know. She came. She came like a train. Amelia's Jewel got to overpass in the shot.
Over and over again, my love. Over and over again with you.
Oscar's Fortune getting right up against the inside for Pike. He's coming quickly, Oscar's Fortune. It's overpass in front though from Oscar's Fortune. Amelia's Jewel overpass. Too good for them again. And they ram home another one in the Quokka.
And now on PG Podcast Network, it's time for the year-round Carnival with Vince Accardi and your host, Racetrack Ralphy.
Over and over and over for Overpass so far. Thanks so much for getting our preview of both the Quokka and South Australia, the two Group 1s there, South Australian Oaks and the Sangster. Vince Accardi from Daily Sectionals. Good morning to you.
Ralphy, good morning.
There's some nice little races we're going to talk about today.
We've been blessed. We've been blessed.
Absolutely. So it looks like we're going to get really good weather for both Ascot and for South Australia there, which is good. So it means we've got good tracks. We don't have to worry about those type of uncertainties as far as Ascot goes. Let's get straight into the Quokka, and he's just an absolute machine. This horse in Overpass. Wherever Bjorn sends him, he just turns up and he gives his best.
Oh, Ralphie, and has the horse come back in the right vein as well? That's the big thing, isn't it? I mean, how has the horse returned? I mean, it's just unbelievable. How old is it, Ralphie?
So it's a 6-year-old.
Well, yeah, okay, 6-year-old. Just goes to show you can be 6 and still be maintaining, absolute high level. The interesting thing is when you just look at the way it returned. Do you feel there might be a chance this horse could go to the next level as well, right? Or all it has to do is just repeat what it did. I mean, 3.8 lengths above benchmark, second best performance of the day, and it was a strong card at Randwick, Ralphie. Even on the RM, rock solid 3.3. Then you look at the breakdown of the race, the speed early. I thought this was the interesting one for me, Ralphie. Only 1.3 lengths below benchmark first lead speed time. Now, if you look at the last, say, dozen runs of this horse, it's at the low end of what it can do with early speed. In the mid, 1.8 above, 4.1 above last 400. I just feel that this horse came out in that race and actually relaxed. And hence the reason it was so strong over the last 400 metres, where we've seen a tendency, like if we just look at last preparation, for example, 0.4 above benchmark first up when it was Randwick 9th of the 10th, didn't have the same finish. Then it went to Flemington, it was 2.3 above, had nowhere near the same finish, minus 3.8. And then, of course, went to Ascot in November and had a plus 5. And this is the key, Ralphie. Plus 5. The last 400 was only a minus 1.4. Huge middle, virtually matched that first section. Could we have a scenario where this horse is going to improve further off that run? This is why I'm saying to you, Ralphie, is it possible we could see this horse go to another level?
So basically in leading the TJ Smith, but what you've described at a controlled tempo, 3 weeks between runs, he's previously won this race twice first up. But what's been remarkable about him, he's done the double-double, the Winterbottom, and we've been able to see him win the Winterbottom third up. So It's this track, it's this distance, and what you're saying is that race shape was perfect for him to avoid flatness. Yes, he's an animal. He's got to get on a plane. He's got to turn up. But, gee, he's done it 4 times. What you're saying is there's no reason he won't do it 5 times as far as running to his best.
Yeah, and this is what I feel we might get to see is a situation. Because no matter what happens, there's only so much you can drag out either your early speed or your late speed. And then when you sort of look at the raw figures on this particular horse, like at Ascot in particular, it seems to blend in the top out is somewhere around the +8 range. And this gives you really good insight of what the horse is doing in terms of sustained speed from the start to the finish before we allow for any adjustments on the day. Now, it has been able to go above benchmark through each split time, but it's at a de-acceleration over the last 2/3 of the race, where I feel if they can get through this first half of the race, I'm not saying it's going to be the same as what it was at its first up run this time in. I don't even know if it needs to be. The reality is we just might see this horse be able to run through that first section around benchmark +1 and actually have a high velocity over the last 2 split times. That actually makes it, as crazy as it sounds, better for the horse instead of having to do it at both ends. Because you know, Ralphy, when you're doing it at both ends, there's vulnerability all the time. There's those stalkers that are going to have that chance to run you down. And when you're all out of petrol, it's hard. There's nowhere else to go over the last 150. It's all hard. Whereas if this horse has come back and just relaxed that little bit, and that's what I'm feeling through that first up run, then this horse can be very strong over the last 2/3 of the race. Even if it's going faster than what it did last start, it's going to be very strong. And there's a chance this horse could rise to +5.
Well, if he does that, it's good luck beating him, isn't it?
Oh, they won't beat him.
Right. Well, that's a good starting point. Headwall was beaten 1.4 lengths by Briasa. There was nose between it and Overpass. So he's going to make up 1.3 lengths on Overpass. But I can't help thinking Ascot 1200, particularly if what you're saying is there's a chance that Overpass is going to improve further. Compared to Randwick 1200, this is a very, very different dynamic, and you want to be on those on pace, don't you?
Well, you got a rail placement 3. There's no problems when there's 3. You can get to those lanes, right?
Yep.
It's 7 off the fence, roughly. And it mimics very similar to Flemington in terms of that scenario when you get to around the 300-metre mark to the finish line. It's a long straight. This is a runner that, of course, is going to be back, and don't know how Zach Lloyd's going to handle himself in terms of the strategy of riding. Could find yourself in the pressure moment. You're not going to be thinking about those lanes, or depending on who you get on the back of. And of course, if you got on the back of someone like Willie Pike, it'd be very different because he would drag you out in those lanes because that's where he's going to go. Then there's a chance you are going to be able to get home and run like what you did, let's say, at Randwick with a +7.3. But the bottom line is the way this is set up, it's not in its favour. In terms of its capability, of course, we've got a horse who's turned up last start, run 2.6 above, gone to another level, genuinely has improved what I would consider at least 1 length, Ralphy, and still climbing. But I don't know if it's going to come this preparation. I don't know, this excitement, or they feel this might be easier. It's not going to be easier.
And
never is.
Yeah, you see it on your IVR profile. Their best is current prep 2.6, best last prep 1.5. So he's improved a length. But there you have a look at nice and simple with Overpass 3.8 and 3.9. He's going to go again in a big way.
Yep. And so, of course, it's be foolish for you not to have, like for me in particular, not to have it like hard on the scoring.
Yep.
Because I'm just sort of spitballing about what might happen. The reality is it does deserve to be up in the top group because that performance last start was still excellent. But the shape and the structure is unlikely to be in its favour.
Well, the likely front runner with Overpass is Front Page, and he also comes off a Group 1 second in a real Sydney race in the Galaxy, running second there to the real horse on the rise in Private Harry there. Probably had the perfect not only race shape but also a day where on paces were assisted at Rosehill. How does he profile here?
Yeah, he's really, really interesting runner, Ralphy. Of course, is it going to be possible? I mean, Tyler Schiller's impressing me big time the way he's riding, Ralphie. He impresses me big time. But here we are. We're in Western Australia. It's a different game, right?
Mm.
Now, this is another runner that is not going to be like Overpass in the lane advantages. What I've always noticed with Ascot is when you come round the turn and you're a front runner and the rail's in the 3 position, it's not as easy to be in the lanes for leaders. It's usually not going to happen. And I feel it's got something to do with the speed in the ground, Ralphie. They just run naturally with more speed, and therefore they don't have that explosiveness unless you've got a real slow pace where they can sort of explode in the home straight and veer to the right to get into the faster lanes. They tend to just keep rolling, and therefore I'm just taking this assumption because I don't ride horses, that doesn't go through their mind to try and get out wider. So Front Page, I feel, could go out very, very fast. Is Tyler Schiller going to let that happen? Now, why I want to sort of mark this communication on Tyler Schiller, he seems to be very balanced in terms of his perspective when he goes to the front. He won't let him rip, Ralphie. So
Damien Lane style, you reckon?
Yeah, he could be, but different in the sense that Damien does it because he doesn't want to lead.
Right. Okay.
Tyler Schiller just does it because he wants to make sure there's energy.
Yes.
At the end. So he's not going to be, well, I don't feel he's going to be frightened being at the front, right? But he might just take a slightly better position, or how he may find it more challenging to manage the track because this is not his normal place and he's still evolving as a rider and might just be on a track that's got plenty of speed in it, and he just might find himself rolling a lot faster and maybe not being able to make that same assessment. So we could see a situation where Front Page will go out and run +2 to +4. I don't know about +5, but +2, +4, that then probably only heightens the chances of Overpass. Because Overpass is drawn pretty well in 10, Ralphie. They don't have any problems coming across. Front Page, obviously, it wouldn't matter if it was drawn 1 or 15. It's just going to come across.
Just leads.
Yeah, and lead.
So that's the Eastern States form, and then the locals. And we've probably got to start with Western Empire. If there's a preview podcast Hall of Fame, he's on it after that Gold Rush win where they served up such juicy prices on a target race. Here's the interesting thing with Western Empire. He's sort of peak figures have always been 1,400 a mile, but when's he been set for this first up? Now, last year he ran very, very well in this race and it was actually in the same day, but to Magnificent Andy. But he had goals ahead. This time in, 5 million up for grabs. He's set for this. He's trialled well. How do you read his potential to be able to produce what you're saying is +3, +4 required to knock off Overpass?
Yeah, well, it's the best trial he's had coming in, Ralphie, ever in his whole history.
Okay.
So that probably, well, we can look at that 2 ways, right? Number one, they've got him in just sensational shape.
Yep. Which
I have no doubt. But then also, it's 14 days out. They're pretty switched on stable. I'm hoping they're not going to be flat. Usually flatness comes if it's 7 to 10 days out.
Yep.
So here we've got probably a slightly different scenario. So I'm taking the position with the stable. That's not going to be the case. And, yeah, the 1,200 metres, it does represent a better setup than, let's say, what it did last campaign, first up 1,100, which, it's just too short. And it did put down that plus 1.6 at 1,100 metres. Really high-powered last 400 metres of plus 6.1. Really, I mean, the last 800 metres was just, like, stunning. And this is a horse that does have that capacity under high tension, where you can grind all the way through. Like, in other words, be a high velocity pretty much after you've gone a few hundred metres, 300-400 metres, and then maintain that high velocity all the way to the finish line, regardless of what tension is. So if they're smashing him up front, he's not going to be a horse that's going to get to the last 400 and be empty. He's going to be at the last 400 being just as aggressive as what he was between the 8 and the 4. And you will look through the intel, if you see it there, Ralphy, there's plenty of scenarios. When you combine the last 800 metres, we're seeing plus 7, 8 to 12 range combined. And then you look at the raws, and you can see on the raws, this horse has plenty of plus 8 to plus 12 range, further franking the sustained endurance this horse has, under high pressure. So this horse is going to love pressure. The only disadvantage is if there wasn't any pressure, and that's not going to happen, is it, Ralphie?
You wouldn't think so, not with the $5 million up for grabs. They tend to run in a big field. So I saw Simon Miller putting some very entertaining stuff on Twitter during the week. And with West Star, there's a horse that we were asked about recently, actually on our members podcast, and he said this is a very serious horse in the rise, and he said he's got a phrase: beat overpass. So what has West Star done so far, and what potential has he got?
Well, this horse is like, what's it had? 6 runs in its life.
Yep.
So on its 6th race start, comes out and puts first up a plus 2.3. So if we just work on previous prep, that's an improvement of in excess of 4 lengths. And then if you go to the prep prior to that, we won't look at the very first race start, the horse had improved 3 lengths through that campaign, because it was 4.8, 2 preps below benchmark, 2 preps back. Last prep, Ascot in October, 1,000 metres though, minus 1.9, 3 lengths improvement. Here we are now. We went straight to 1,200, bang, plus 2.3, and franking the improvement. All right, so we harness that and say, okay, what do we have? Well, a few things. Number one, very, very interesting that the horse was able to go out, first up, break benchmark first split time. That adds a new PB. More importantly, was the tremendous strength this horse has been able to get from one campaign to another in terms of the way it grew. If you look at all its other runs leading into this first up run, the best it was able to do in the mid is 0.2 below to 0.6 below range off a benchmark or a -1 speed. So trying to mimic something very similar, that's the best it's able to do. And then obviously not have any real big finish. In this case, at first up, it went 0.3 above to plus 7.3, Ralphie, in the mid. And then you usually expect a total collapse over the last 400, particularly for a horse that's finding this sort of ferocity through the first 800 metres. It delivers a plus 1.9. And we've seen a taper. The taper was there in the last 200 metres. The taper was 1.9 lengths. What does that tell you when that happens?
More to come.
There's still more improvement to come.
Yeah.
So I sit back here and say, okay, 2.3, it is all before you. You have to take that next step. Interesting, Timmy Clark on board.
Oh, this is what I was going to ask you, because like to choose him as the rider, and I don't know how much choice there was, given there's probably, some good riders in South Australia, obviously, clearly, that we'll get to. But a front-running jockey, a Waterhouse bot jockey, and to say, come on, jump on the plane, we've got something for you here.
Yeah, because there's no doubt he's going to do one thing, Timmy. It has to be. He's going to stalk overpass, isn't he?
Yep.
Wherever he goes, just has to stalk him. And Timmy Clark also, he will absolutely understand that surface underneath him. And, of course, it'll be the first time on the horse in terms of a race. But the reality is he's got a good one. He's got a real good one. He does have to climb, though, Ralphie, right? He's got to climb. He's got to find. It's not like he's going to come here and say, well, 2.3 will get the job done. No, 2.3 is not going to get the job done. I feel this is going to be a race where if you can't, I sort of look at it like this, even though the line that you need is about 1.7, to be competitive. I feel that's just a little bit misleading in the sense because there's that real group that'll be roughly that's what they need to be able to perform at, and we get that balance line. But there's these 2-3 horses, and this is one of those 3 horses that can strike well above the 2 range, and then you look at those horses that are sitting above them, they're sort of mid to high 2s and into the 3 range and high 3s, and all of a sudden to actually win, you're going to have to push somewhere near 3.5 plus 4 to win. So we know we've got to find something. And who's going to doubt Simon Miller?
So we'll just finish with one other horse that's had less than 10 starts, and that's Joker's Grin. I've chatted to you a bit about this horse, and I think he'd be a fantastic sprinter on the east side of the country in the short course races. Love to see him at Fleming up the straight. He was big first up. So it's the either-or situation. I was scratching my head. Why are they running him 2 weeks off that first up run to then now? So is it he can't quite run 1,200 and he was disappointing, or was he a little bit flat at 1,100 with this the grand final, and here comes a big grand final, big career PB, because he has got serious closing speed, and what you talk about with these lanes from barrier 13, Patrick Carberry will probably just target it. So what type of talent and potential has he got?
Yeah, well, his name's a good one, Joker's Grin. Well, I look at it like this. He's had those 2 runs, and they've both been impressive in the sense that, number one, he's come out first up, gone 0.7 above, new PB. Realistically, he's made that length improvement. Now, it's not as gigantic as the campaign before, and that sort of gives you some insight about where we're trending ceiling-wise. And, of course, the evolution comes in a few ways. Number one, more racing. Number 2, depending on what distances you run at. But what is starting to show here is this. That Ascot first up 1,000, the first couple of 100 metres, 3.7 lengths below benchmark. The last 2 combined split times, this is pretty much from the 800 to the finish line combined, is around 7.6 lengths above combined. You then look at the structure and look at those hidden fractions. You're seeing there was a definite and a clear dip between the 4 and the 2 of around 2.3 lengths, and it rebounded strongly. Then it went up 100 metres, 1,100, still, in my view, classified specialist distance range, right? We've seen an increase in pace of about 1.5 lengths, but then we look at that structure again over the last 800 metres. There it is right before you, Ralphy. It is 7.8 lengths combined. We go then to the fractional split time. And this is interesting. The observation you need to make when you're studying the hidden fractions and the way you need to observe the detail of the data to give you more insight, particularly when you're making an assessment at 1,200 metres. 8 to the 6 plus 2.4. Not the highest that it's ever done. We have to go back to 30th of November plus 4.2. That first critical split time for 1,200 metres. 6 of the 4 last start plus 1.6. So we've seen a speed reduction of almost a length, 3/4 of a length. 4 to the 2 maintaining slightly quicker, which means excellent efficiency in the ride. Last 200 metres plus 2. We're rebounding back, Ralphy. In other words, the horse has lost a little bit of speed. It could have all been part of the game plan and then started to build again. But what that gives me insight in is when I'm looking at these hidden fractions is it's not unrealistic for me to sit here and say, well, this horse has still got under 3/4 of a length improvement on energy distribution efficiency based on its 1,100 metres, and therefore giving me a lot of confidence that we're going to see a much stronger horse at 1,200 off that run when compared to last campaign. Because when this horse, yes, maybe that overreaction between the 8 and the 6 really dulled its last 200 metres is back in November because it went 4.2 above. But look at this, Ralphie. Went 4.2 above all the way down to 0.3 above. Like, that's a massive loss of velocity. then sharp rebound. You're running this fartlek race, right? 2.5 over. This is the way not to ride, right? And then you see a complete tank out over the last 200, not breaking benchmark, losing 2.8. And I feel that was the setup of the race and the management of the horse. Now the horse has gotten stronger. And what we're seeing the next evolution of a lightly raced runner that is going to climb. The challenge also faced with this horse, maybe to a lesser, I shouldn't say to a lesser extent than West Star, but it faces the same challenge. If you're only talking about 2.5, it's in the wheelhouse. The 1200 is not going to be a problem. It's already done a benchmark last campaign. I feel all those things, no dramas. In terms of the way it's going to use that energy is pretty good. There's a little bit of a negative, I feel, 13, because you're going to be dictated to someone and you're not going to be able to find the spot you want. So there could be this situation where the horse might be slightly further back than ideal, or if you're going to jam in a more prominent position, you could have this big chance that you're going to run well outside your comfort zone through that first split time, and then the horse could blow up. So it doesn't have all the favours. I do feel it's going to climb, but I don't know if we're going to see this time round this horse go to what's needed to win, which is, I believe you're going to have to go near 4.
And for our customers taking multis, there's just one I want to add here, because I think I can see it being a real trifecta chance, and that is rope them in. Now, the race you just described of Joker's Grin, it started hard second favourite at $4. Now, it was plain, but was there a chance it was flat second up? And given that last prep, 4th, beaten 1.8 lengths to Overpass, I can see it being the type of runner that sort of ducks, weaves, and puts that sort of bit of value into a trifecta. And looking at your best last prep graph, that's the 2.8 there. 2.5, and really 2.5 is going to get you sort of somewhere around that top 4 finish.
Yeah, I feel there's a real cluster of horses in that, like high 1s, low 2s. This is one of them. Now, of course, Ralphy, we do have a 2.5 PB, but it's at 1100. So, I'm inking that out as a specialist scenario. And then, of course, when you look at that structure, you do have an expectation this horse should be able to bring that to 1200. Now, when it did do it back in November, it was plus 1.3. There's a few things you can, and this is what I always say. What a difference it makes when you have to breathe in a tougher manner when you have to go a lot faster early. And that's what happened to it at Ascot back in November. It was asked to run half a length above benchmark. Now, it's not the first time it's done that, but we do see a different style of horse when you have this situation. Now, in this case, they are drawn golden. I have no doubt, Ralphie, had it been Joker's Grin 5, they would have been grinning.
Yeah.
Right, because that's the golden position in terms of lanes where you can breathe and not be in that duel through the first half of the race. And somehow, if you get that space in the home turn to put down your best performance, it's tough to know whether this horse is going to do that. I did see the improvement one run to the other, but it's trending behind Ralphie. Like, it's trending behind where it was last campaign. The break's a lot, well, it's probably not a significant amount smaller. It is less, and in this case, I feel that's a little bit critical. And we're still trending third up to not get to benchmark. So I don't know, Ralphie. Maybe if it gets the right split, the perfect run, we could see this horse find 6 off the last run. It's not easy to do, Ralphie. It just feels like this time round it's either a one run behind, or we're going to see a horse that might not trend to last campaign. We're going to find out.
So, in summary, and we're not doing an update podcast tomorrow, but there's a chance that there's $2.10 and $1.30 sitting there for Overpass. So you take it.
It's a high probability that I won't be on any other horse but that.
Right.
But it's tight.
Yeah. So
yeah. Well, how are you going to knock beyond it? The only scary thing I have is this.
Yep.
It's probably a borderline A-grade bet, right?
Yep.
The challenge is this. Can he do it again? Like I get a bit nervous because see,
It's going for
bookmakers,
5.
bookmakers over their lifespan, they look for these things. How many races have you won in a row? The more you win in the row, the higher the probability they're going to make a lot of money because it's going to be short and they can take a lot more in, and therefore if it gets beaten, they make fortunes, right?
Yes.
So can Bjorn do it again? I reckon if he does it again, he should go down as one of the greatest feats of all time to go and win the Quokka again. So there's nothing to stop him. I feel that the horse is actually on track to absolutely run at least to what we seen last start. He's going to be very, very hard horse to beat. And probably the only thing that beats him is if a horse like West Star finds that 2 or 3 lengths because we've got no ceiling. But that just means he might have to be settling for runners up, which I wouldn't be crying about personally because my vested interest is usually always heavy for the place, Ralphy.
There it is. All right, let's have a look at South Australia here. So the rail's true, and for those doing your replays from a couple of weeks ago, that means it could be a very different situation where the rail was out a long way here. We're going to start with the South Australian Oaks, and this, unlike unlike the Quokka we just did, this looks like a nice open race here, Vince. And what's really unusual about this is the favourites nowhere on the grid as comes to recent times because, of course, Moving Out comes from very soft tempo at Mornington last week, a very soft tempo when he was a big finisher there at Rosehill 3 starts back. So that it's just such a different dynamic. Two Darn Lizzie, Benegill, and lots of different form as well. Polymnia, another different form. So they're the main 4 in the market. How are you seeing this unfold pace-wise?
So Moving Out's the favourite, is it?
Sorry, it's actually 4 favourites. It's pretty much 4 favourites. So Benegill just for around about $4, Two Darn Lizzie mid-4s, Moving Out about $5, and Polymnia about $5. So you've got 4 horses at $5 or shorter.
Yeah, well, you're right about the situation in terms of when you have this sort of setup track-wise. You could almost... look, the track's not as good as Flemington. I want to be clear on this, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of how the races run in the home straight, about where the lanes are, you almost say, is that Flemington? Because the lanes start at 10.
Yes.
That's where they start. And it's always usually just inside the 300-metre mark to the line. So that's where all the action begins in terms of maximum speed on the track. So when you have this situation where you don't have the rail placement out, where the lanes are just a given, then it's hard. It's really, really hard to get in the lanes because you're going to get in the lanes, you will have to concede distance. And that it will have an impact on you over the last 300 metres, particularly if there's tension. Like if there's tension in this race, it's going to be, forget about wanting to even consider a lane. It's just going to be no joke, no go there, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the inside runners, they don't have any of those things to worry about. It's a pretty decent sized field. The question is, can Blake do it up the front?
This is on Two Darn Lizzie. So Two Darn Lizzie, 2 starts back. You go, oh, well, it was beaten 2.5 lengths. Yeah, to Treasure the Moment, who's a star. Then last start, Moonee Valley, that track was terrible since had a barrier trial. So what level of capability do you think it's got at its first try at running 2,000 metres?
Yeah, well, of course, this is the big thing. I'm sure if Blake Shin on board will be, obviously he's going to understand that we're going to have to run 2,000. And a number of horses are going to have to test themselves at the 2,000. This is not the only horse. But we can be pretty confident about one thing. What happened to Flemington going 6.8 above? You don't want to go that speed here.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be tough to run the 2,000. But if you can be measured, like we've seen, example, Moonee Valley last start, ground conditions playing a pretty big role in that pace, though, was 0.7 below. I'm sort of going to go back and dial the clock a bit further back than that. He could dictate, and that wouldn't surprise me at all. And if he's allowed to dictate that first 400 to 600 metres, guess what we're going to have? We're going to be orderly. And orderly would be Blake Shin could be getting away with anything from benchmark -1 to maybe -4. Now, if he does that, he's massive chance of running a super strong 2,000 metres in this race under this circumstance. And then probably a big chance of, because I'm trying to see if this horse can emulate the benchmark. Now, this horse emulated 0.1 above at Flemington over a mile, which I would have considered to be unsustainable shape for a horse trying to do 2,000 first time round. Mad pace. The lead speed that day was like +9. Two Dumb Lizzie's going 6.8 above. We're not going to have that here, Ralphie. Well, I mean, I say these things, but you can get a surprise, right? But I don't believe that's going to happen, and therefore Blake will get an opportunity to relax this horse, and this horse can relax quite comfortably, and he may dictate, Ralphie. He just may dictate, and if he dictates and tries to put one on the field, he's going to be a very hard horse to run down, because there'll be no big flashing runs, because the lanes are the same for everybody. Everyone's going to be tired over the last 300 or 400 unless they absolutely crawl. And then that would probably be a big error if Blake did that, if they went for a crawl.
So Benegill's the favourite, and just like I said, there's 4 horses sort of contesting it. But so second at Treasure at the moment, but second at Treasure at the moment on very wet ground. Okay, the IVR forecast is around about benchmark at the moment, so you couldn't say that it can't produce it. But gee, it seems a tight price to me. What's your thoughts?
Well, I guess the scenario, and this is the hard part, is making a decision for a lightly raced horse about the ground and what impact that can have on some horses. So it returned to WTI +2.5 on the soft side, right? So not like something that would be in its favour from that perspective. So not going to have that problem, most likely from a ground condition. It's going to be on very clean ground, I would assume. And therefore, we could see an emergence. It's had that one run of the 2,000. I look at the numbers and say, I don't feel we got to see the best of the horse because of potentially the ground condition. It's going to run 2,000. How much better? Because that's what it's got to do. It's going to be how much better. Because if it just repeats what it did last start, okay, you could sit here and say maybe the winner's going to run 2.8 below. I don't feel that's going to be the case. I feel you're going to have to test that benchmark line. So the horse has to improve. And sometimes horses having their second crack at 2,000, they're going to do that. They've definitely got the right rider to be able to do that. And I don't feel they're going to have to worry too much about what's happening through the first 600 metres up front. The only challenge that Mark Zahra is going to have is where the horse is drawn. It's a pretty sticky gate. I don't feel you're going to be able to control exactly where you want to be in the first half of the race. Because if they don't go out fast, Ralphie, it's compressed. And then when you're compressed and you're drawn 13, there's always that big chance you're going to be 3 wide, possibly 4 wide. And as soon as you see the 4 wide line, it's going to be without cover. So you're then looking for a spot. And the spot works like this. I have to burn more fuel to get in a better position going in a more forward position, or I have to go further back, and then you have to concede more ground, and that could work against you. Now, this horse, I look at its sprint. It does have a sprint. It's 400-metre acceleration on a couple of occasions. We've seen around a 4.5 range type sprint. That's what the horse has got. Now, that's not going to be good for you if you come into the home turn and you're spotting them 10, is it?
Not at all.
So that's the challenge with this horse. Doesn't get everything in its way, but yes, second time 2,000 plus.
Quick back up, moving out. So it's shown a paralysing turn of foot at Mornington, as it did at its first Australian start at Rosehill. Nearly fell at Rosehill at its second start at 2,000. That comes from that same race as Benegill, and it was on wet ground. So if we park that aside, what's its challenge getting to 2,000 off such slow tempo races, but does obviously have a degree of talent?
Well, if we do find ourselves in a situation where the tempo's not there, well, this is your winner.
Yeah.
No one's going to Yeah, no one's going to outsprint this horse over the last 400.
I can't help thinking barrier one's just beautiful for it. Just to say, it picks up 3 or 4 spots just from the barrier.
Yeah, and I don't reckon there is going to be tempo. You see, so and this is the old adage, Ralphy. This is one of the things that I love with the platform that we use. You look at the racing analytics platform, you just go through it all, and it's very easy to make assessments about positioning on the board where you're going to be. And if you look at this horse is absolute typical already with the lightly raced setup. It likes to sit 6 to 8 lengths from the leader. And in this case, 2,000 metres, big chance you're going to be 6 from 1. So if Blake's going benchmark, you're going 6 lengths below.
I reckon Benny Mellon might try for 2 or 3 back the fence, even a bit closer from barrier one. Yeah.
Yep. And that becomes a higher probability if Blake tries to go out and be more controlled through the first half of the race and try and, without being silly, dumb down the pace. 2-4 lengths below benchmark, now all of a sudden moving out, could be in a scenario, Ralphie, where it's travelling 8-9 lengths below benchmark, 4 to 6 lengths off them. That finish will be there.
So if you're watching it and Blake puts the Bunsen burners in the 800, he's probably can hang on, and if he keeps them stacked up until the turn, you can see it moving out sprinting it.
Yeah. So I felt this was the horse that, of course, it's hard in the market, but it's the big sleeper for me in terms of where you could end up, because you can't look at that Rosehill run and make any genuine sense out of it, other than saying the horse didn't appreciate the conditions.
Well, the second one, but the first one that was the real. What type of turn of foot did it show that time?
Oh, plus 11.7.
It's pretty serious.
It's serious, but of course we're off a minus 20 though, Ralphie. I don't know we're going to get that right, but it doesn't matter. The horse went 10 lengths faster or 12 lengths faster, and almost matched the same speed in the end.
So Polymnia's got also the one on the market. Has it been tested yet? Do we know where Polymnia fits in?
Well, what we can bring to the table, it's another horse that has a high velocity over the last 400 metres. In some cases, somewhat similar to moving out, but hasn't been able to replicate that on a much faster pace. There is a deterioration where if we look at moving out, I would say not. Because when you're going 20 lengths below benchmark, we know this is a hurdle pace.
Yep.
And I can say on many occasions I've clocked split times on hurdlers, and they can run 10s last 400, but they're no good, right? When you get into flat races.
Yep.
And so I don't sit here and get excited about that. I do get excited more about like what I did at Hawkesbury.
Yep.
11.5 below and has smashed it with an 8.3. That to me is real. And this horse is like rock hard fit. So it's got all that in its favour, and you aren't going to have any issues with the 2000 at all, right? So you're not going to be in a scenario where you're going to sit back and say, do I have to be concerned about it? No, you're not. You're not going to be concerned. And you're right at the top of your game. But this is what I want to point out. You're right at the top of your game, but you're still a minus 2.5 horse. Like, I don't believe you're going to find benchmark. This is what I feel. I can't see it. I just can't see it. So that's my issue. Where a horse like moving out, a lot more lightly raced, drawn sensational, because you've got to look at where this horse is drawn. 14. Yeah, that's bad news.
Nowhere land.
Well, where are you going to go? What are you going to try and become best friends with a rider like Mark Zahra and say, well, Mark, I'm going to follow you. Jamie's going to say, well, what? Jamie's just going to go with the feel.
Yep.
Of course, she's going to be looking at where Mark Zahra is, but I feel this horse might be forced back a lot way. And if you hunt more forward, or what do you believe? You think there's going to be a big sprint there? It's going to be disappearing faster than you can imagine.
So just touch on the South Australian form here, and it's a bit unusual, like I said, and you'll see it on your early edition, that there's actually a couple of pretty fast races. So it's a different dynamic. Cinch beat all kinds of folk in a fast 1800. It was off, a bit of I think it was 50 days between its South Australian, its Tasmanian runs. But prior to that as well, and I want to put this on the table. Comanche Miss, it might have been flat as a proverbial Carter's hat last start. It's $26. It was a proper mile win. So is there any chance that there's some South Australian form can upset the apple cart from the visitors?
I feel there is that big chance of that happening. There really is a real big chance of this happening. I mean, I'm taking the 1,800 metre race very, very seriously.
Yep.
Now, I do have issues myself when we see, let's say, Kinch. Is that how you pronounce it, Ralphy? Yeah, Cinch. Okay, thank you. It turns up Morphettville, 0.8 above, new PB, gets in the top 3. Unbelievable pace early. 7.4. That's pretty high octane. I expect to have massive deterioration late. It's not there. It's only a 4.7 lengths below benchmark. It did all happen pretty much in the last 200 metres where it went 3.1 below. What the horse is demonstrating is this is also demonstrating if there's no pace, got an excellent 400 metre sprint. You look at the run at Launceston, off a minus 13.1, it's 8.1 last 400. So you know the horse has got that capability. But this is all, see, I'm looking at it like this. This is all first campaign. Now, I am paying respect to the Hayes crew. It's landed on top, but the setup, and this is just purely from a betting point of view, doesn't profile right for me, betting-wise. Performance-wise, I can't knock it. Just because I don't want to back it, I'm not going to look for a bad run, right, and push the horse down. I'm a big believer that when you do the chessboard work, you've got to allow your work to flow on the merit of the numbers, not on the merit of whether you feel you should back it or not. You see, they're two different art forms. See, a lot of people get stuck here, Ralphie, and I was definitely one of those until I understood the skill of separation. It's such an art form, and this is why there is I've stopped using levels to the game. I'm now using the word layers to the game because it's a fairer way of looking at things. This is why there's layers to the game, Ralphie. You see, you have a horse on top, so I've got to back that. No. Hang on a second. Yes, you've done the right thing. You've worked it correctly in terms of your art form about where you position it. Because on that last start 1,800 metre run, there's nowhere you can poke a hole other than saying, oh, hang on, we've got a flattening over the last 200 metres. Of course you would when you're running 7.5 above, smashing all your records of the past. Of course you're going to have that. But I'll take you to the mile race at Pakenham. 3.2 above, heavy slow down the middle, still rebounds with a plus 1.1 last 400. But then, this is why you pay respect, but then you look at it from a betting position and say, do I like this setup? 5 runs, all first campaign, 50-day break. What's your assessment of 50-day break? Is it a freshen? Is it a let-up? Either way, I'm taking a position, it's first campaign. Comes out, I'm definitely factoring in my bounce theory, and we've seen a bounce to the high. Now, horses, when I look at the mathematical back end, when they have this set up, and mind you, it's not usually like this, where it's all on one campaign, they have a negative regression at their subsequent start. And it is 14 days, which heightens that microscope. So that's the downside. Has the stable got it right? I think they have got it right in terms of you could be in this race big time, but maybe things have been happening with this horse that they might not have expected initially, and now it's just evolved and materialised here and has shown the ability and warrant being here and being a competitive chance. But the setup from the betting point of view is a negative.
And just finally, because I mentioned
crazy there.
No, absolutely. But the best this current prep chart has at the top Comanche Miss at $26. It started deep in the market last start, but fast race to fast race, flat. Like I said, flat. Has got a chance of being able to run out 2,000 because unlike Cinch, it's in its third prep, fourth up, probably set for this race.
Now, I have been trying to work out what to do with this horse because of Stokesy.
Yep.
And what you're saying has tremendous merit. First up, Pakenham, 9.3 lengths below benchmark for split time 1400. Carves out a really sharp last 800 metres. Combined, 6.1 above. You look at the split breakdown, 3.6 above between the 8 and the 4, plus 2.5 last 400. Then exactly what you said. Huge run, flattening signal. Plus 5.2 first split time, smashing all its records. Still running 2.5 above between the 8 and the 4, and then really only collapsing over the last 200 metres with 0.9 below, lost about 2 lengths, and that's because of the heat, because we've got a reversal in the energy distribution all through the first 2/3 of the race. Then goes to 1,800 metres. Yes, it is running in a more modest tempo, 3.3 below, but that's still considered to be good pace first time up to 1,800. Fair move in the mid, plus 3.8. Not as dynamic as what we've seen the run before. That's a signal of flatness, right? But what we've seen is we've seen the continuation of deterioration. Now, I always say, Ralphy, and this is just purely through the art form of measurements, when you're looking at what are some of the signals when you perceive a horse to have a flat line run, and what are the signals when you're looking at the subsequent start to say how well were they impacted by that, and how much slower do you go to overcome it. So this horse has gone 8.5 slower. It's I like to see like a 10 lengths, to be candid with you, right? 10 lengths ago, oh well, you've overcome it if you're going 10 lengths slower run to run. But it's unfair for me to say that, because if you've gone +8 and now you're going benchmark -2, that's probably not the right assessment, because when I say 10 lengths slower, like I'm talking about, you should be going like 10 lengths below benchmark, right? And here it's going 3.3 below. So not properly in its right setup to say that the horse had overcome the flatness because of much softer pace. So again, this is the analytics side. When I talk about and say, well, you need a horse to be going 10 lengths slower, but you've got to understand under what structure. 10 lengths slower, well, it's gone 8 slower here, but you're still travelling only 3.3 below. I want to see the horse travelling like 8 to 10 lengths below benchmark, actually below, to be confident that it's overcome the flatness in the race. And then usually what you do, as soon as you see that, and then you examine the data over the last 2 sections, what you find is this: they're very strong finishing off. When they're not overcoming the flatness, they have the absolute reversal. They're not strong finishing off. And this is what's happened here. And this is why I am taking your thoughts into mind here as being like on point, that we have a situation where the horse has been impacted by that run 2 starts back. But what I couldn't overcome was, what confidence can you have the horse going to run strong 2,000?
It's an unknown.
That's all.
Yeah,
that's all. Because it's a tough race. But I looked at this is the thing. Stokesy had me baffled in a few races because he's got, he's trying to be Mr. Waller, Ralphie. He probably can be there.
He can be there, exactly. So in summary, this is a Friday, but it looks like you're going to be, if you're playing, it's going to be between 2 days unless you're moving out. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, I'd say I'm not going to play in this race, Ralph, because I'm not as courageous as a lot of other people.
Yep.
Because I feel there's other races and opportunities. So I'm probably going to be a nice boy and just watch from, the binoculars from the grandstand and see how well I assess the race.
Well, we're not going to spend as much time on the Sangster. This is such an open race; it's unbelievable. Yep. It's some real good horses, and as we often say, the good part about doing these on the elite races, it's grand final time, and it's a grand final in a big way, because we're not just talking about the prize money, the $1 million up for grabs, but it's obviously the black type and the Group 1 for the fillies and mares. They're all coming to play. They're aimed at the race. How are you seeing this unfold pace wise?
Good, very, very solid in terms of the setup of the pace. It's a pretty clear line. If you look at the race speed profile, it's a pretty clear line that we are going to be, I shouldn't even say it, but I'm not going to say it, right? We're going to be running +1 or greater.
Yep.
It could be quite simple. It could be +2 or greater. I don't feel it's going to be anything slower than that. Now, it's not a big cluster of horses going forward, but it's a big field, and it's all about like where they're drawn. they're drawn to create energy. With the exception of Estrella, who, like, I've learnt a lot about that horse. And even though I've got it in the forward motion, I'm going to give you a heads up now. I don't feel that horse is going to lead. And if it is leading, it's going to be the first horse beaten. So just because of the way what I've learnt about that horse. So it'll be interesting to see what Benny Allen does. But the others, they're pretty much going to set it up. And I have a good level of confidence that we're going to be hitting the bar +1, +2 for sure. It could be faster than that, depending on what Ben Allen wants to do with Estrella.
So as for a one first up, its most advantage here, it was after 232 days away. It won at Ascot. It had 4 runs in England, and the market really let you on for a class mare. There's 2 ways of looking at this. So which way are you looking at it? Because it got away with a very soft tempo 1100. Obviously, grand finals here for a few of them. So that probably tells you it can avoid flatness in theory on the 2-week backup.
Oh, 100%, Ralphie. What is the price right now? Because I'm just looking at the prices yesterday. I don't know. Is that right? They're all in the 7 range?
$8. Yep.
So we've got a race. This is stunning. We have a race like the golden old times, where it's $8 to fuel. You know, a bit of courage has come back with the corporate bookmakers then, right? This is a 2-horse race.
And who's the other one?
The one I got at the top of the charts.
Stratton Angel and Asphora.
Stratton Angel.
Yeah.
That's the race. I could not believe this is why I said, I got to ask Ralphie, what is the real price of this race, right? And I'm sitting back here, $7.50. It's probably going to be $3 tomorrow when I hit Ralphie with it. He's going to say to me, $3.50, something like that. And obviously something the same with Stratton Angel, maybe to a lesser extent, right? Because I could understand that horse being a little bit more stretched in the price. This horse here, this first up run, you'll never get a better signal than this, that
yes.
I'm back, and I'm back in a serious way. I don't ever really love when they go overseas, Ralphie.
Yep.
And then come back, generally speaking. But what I can say, they've gone about it in the right way. Excellent break, and it is on the scoreboard. 5.5 lengths below benchmark first split time. Tick the box, like you said, Ralphie, get rid of that flatness scenario. 2.7 above between the 8 and the 4, matching it. Then the golden nugget. Look at the last 2, Ralphie. Look at the last 2 on the platform. We've gone from 2.5 above, and you can see it. Look at the rise. 0.5 above, 8 to 6, 2.16 to 4, 2.54 to 2. Bang, 0.3 above. A 2.3 length drop off last 400. Doesn't matter how you want to look at it. You can look at it and say maybe there was something reserved. Doesn't matter. We have seen a line of de-acceleration, and when they're first up off this timeline, put it in the bank. It's all conditioning. Put it in the bank. It's all conditioning. So what that means is when you know it's all conditioning, the immediate thing that you can do, again, this is for the form students doing your work, understand how to use the sectional times, right? You would instantly put that back on top of the minus 1.2. What do you get? You get about a 1, 1.5. No surprise. I go to the race matrix say, indicator, race is trending 2.5 above. I go, thank you. Because that's what you want to see. Why do I want to see that? This is why I want to see it. This horse, yes, we have seen a plus 5.3. It's never gone there before. We've seen a plus 3.1. This horse is a rock solid, high 2s, low 3 horse. What is going to happen if this horse turns up and runs plus 3 tomorrow? This is the question, because that's what it's ready to do.
They won't catch it.
Well, it's going to be very hard to beat. Now, again, got to remember, Ralphie, this is why you have to understand the art of the numbers. See, a lot of people, when they do the work, Ralphie, and this was me as well, so I'm always talking about my own experiences when I say these things, because I always look at myself as being the normal guy, like the person next to me. I'm no better or worse than that person. I'm on par with them. Okay, the little edge that I have is this. I might practice more often, and therefore that gives me just a little bit more insight on the intel so I can have more layers of observation. I have just put down plus 1.1. And that is exactly what the horse would do if there was no improvement to come off the first run other than bringing the conditioning to it. Now, the race maker is saying, son, you got it wrong. It needs to be about 2.5. I'm going, no. I'm going to be realistic because I'm looking at wagering here. I'm going to be conservative. 1.1 I'm going to put down, knowing that there's a high probability you're going to run 2.5, 3. So that means I've kept a lot up the locker. I then look at it and say, oh, what are the negatives? You're drawing 14. Well, Aiken, I don't think you've got too many things to think about, have you? So when you get certain riders, what do you look for? This is not a problem. They're not going to be going out the back looking for runs. They're going to go in one direction, forward.
And you can be 3 wide, no cover at Morphettville. It's like Caulfield. There's just one shoot, and yeah.
You're going to be in a forward motion. Now, if you don't overextend and you blend, then the race is there for you to win. So this is why, when I done my work, I said, this is the first horse to beat. Now, can anybody test it? Well, I felt every horse below it can't, where we're at. Now, I could make a case for maybe 1 or 2 runners like a commemorative, but I'm now very nervous about that horse hitting a 3.5 again this time in. Yep. I don't believe it's going to happen. I feel we're going to be seeing more like a 1. And then I look at all the other horses around and I look at all their structural lineup, and I'm putting holes in their capability of getting beyond +2. Now, there is the possibility there's the odd horse that might just go bang. And I go, yeah, okay. Like a Climbing Star could do it, a little deep Charmstone. These things can happen, right? So I'm not sitting here saying they can't, but I feel the probability is low. And that's not good if you're coming with the mindset to bet, right? Because then what's going to happen is you're going to fall apart in your form work and procrastination is going to come in. You're going to say, oh, it's an impossible race to work out, right? Believe in the numbers. That's the art form. That's your separation, and it's clearly visible that there's a separation. And yeah, you can throw it all around. The only way it's not those horses are going to win is these horses have to not turn up. So then I came to Stretton Angel. Said, how can I fault this horse? Let's have a look at this. Stokesy. Firstly, we're going to go back 2 preps. Let's go back to the 11th of May, Ralphy, last year. What did we get? Plus 2.2.
Goodwood this track, this distance.
Who beat it?
Benedetta, quality.
Yep. Now, Climbing Stars ran behind it. But a gap.
Yep.
But Benedetta, airborne at the time, right?
Yep.
I look at the trend line. This is one of the other things that I love about the analytics platform. I love this, Ralphy, is I just go in to the race matrix and I look at the trend. I look at the 6 lead-in runs, strong trend signal 3.1, and then the bigger, it's the franker. What about the subsequent 3 runs? And I look at the subsequent, it's all full and trending 3.2. Means the race is held up in every way. And I'm going, Stretton, you could potentially run 3 here. Very scary. Hence the reason why I made a positional move on a few factors. Number 1, first and foremost, the run this time in at Flemington, 0.2 above, 11th best of the day. Look at the setup of the race, 1.8 below benchmark. No, neither here or there between the 8 and the 4 +1, last 400 plus 2.6. Goes to the Valley. Well, I don't have to tell you about what happened that day with the grounds, right?
Well, we should tell our customers, just you could pen that whole day.
Oh, how do you go to a race in March and get 10 lengths below benchmark? I mean, it's the answer's there, right?
Yep.
So I didn't even go back all that way for this horse. I always, again, form student-wise, I look at historics because I put it on my graph and I can say, okay, this is the outer range, this is the lower range. Last campaign's usually the golden window. And what do we see? Flemington, 9th to the 11th, plus 1.4. I open up and go to the race metrics and say, who won? Have a look at the field. Ralphy, Sunshine in Paris, Bella Nipotina. And I look at the race matrix, 3.5 trending in. We don't have a full grid trending out. A number of horses haven't turned back, like a Giga Quick, Bright to Party, Bella Nipotina, but the trend is still showing 2.8. Even with a whole bunch of horses not there. And that's not to mention Overpass was there, Ralphie. Giga Kick was there. Private Life was there. Beat all them.
Yep.
And I say, okay, well, 1.4's got to be your minimum starting point. Backed off last campaign. With the possibility of going in the 3s. Only horse to contest Asphora. Hence the reason why I've said this is a 2-horse race. Now, the challenge is, which one do you back? Some people, if I was Vince Accardi of when I was 30, easy. I'll just back them both. I don't do that these days. So I've got a bit of time to say to myself, which way am I going?
But that's your Friday morning thoughts.
Yeah.
Yep. Easy. Well, that's been a big hour on those 3 races. We hopefully that's helped you. Of course, you've got the early edition race speed profiles to also have a look at for other races through Ascot and Morphettville. In the meantime, thanks so much for being a customer of Year Round Carnival.